rabbis, when trying to explain this verse, couldn't explain it. So they had a theory to justify what happened. Because eventually, who inherited? Jacob, right? And they said, they justified it in their midrash, their book. They said, in reality, it was Jacob that was first fertilized in the tummy. That was their rationalization. Because they cannot accept that Jacob will be served by Esau. But that's what God said. So the josting that was happening in the tummy is a foretaste of the struggles between these two brothers. People would ask, how would God fulfill His promise of promulgating the line of Abraham when both brothers are bent in killing each other? How could they be the light of the world when all and what people will see was always infighting in the family? Verse 24. When her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. Now the first came forth red all over a hated garment, and they named him Esau. Afterwards his brother came forth with his hands holding to Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old, and she gave birth to them. That's the account of the birth of Jacob and Esau. Now again, to us it might not be significant. To us it might not be great. But to the Jews, it's a big deal. Why was Jacob, why will Esau serve Jacob? That's a big question. And again, the explanation is hard to swallow. So what's the explanation here? Go to Romans chapter 9. Romans chapter 9 explains to us what happened, why Jacob was favored over Esau. And the point here is God is sovereign. Romans chapter 9 verse 10. Not only this, but there was Rebekah also, when she had conceived twins by one man, our father Isaac. So clearly, it's discussing the very same thing, right? It's discussing the pregnancy of Rebekah. And what happened here was, you remember the father of Isaac was Abraham. Abraham initially had two kids, Ishmael and Isaac, right? What's the difference between Ishmael and Isaac? They had the same father, but different mothers, right? But here, it says, but in the case of Isaac, Jacob and Esau, they had the same father, and they had the same mother. So, what does it mean? Their conditions are the same. Not only that, they're twins. Not only that, they were born at the same time. So there's basically no difference between the two. Verse 11. For though the twins were not yet born, note that, they were not yet born, and had not done anything good or bad, so that God's purpose according to His choice would stand, not because of works, but because of Him who calls. the choosing of Jacob was done even before Jacob has done any good works, either good or bad. Why? So that people will know it's not because of them, it's because of God. God made the choice. God is sovereign. The decision was purely God's. Okay, I said fasten your seatbelts. We're going to go a little deeper and deeper in this. Verse 12. It was said to her, the older will serve the younger. Exactly what Genesis 25 said, right? The older will serve the younger. And it's not because the younger was better or the older was worse. It says it's because of the call of God. The plans of God is such. Verse 13. And this is a controversial verse. Just as it is written, Jacob I love, but Esau I hated. Wow. That, my friend, is the sovereignty of God, which people will not accept, and which people will say that when God said He hated Esau, He did not mean He hated Esau. He only means that He did not love Esau. When God said, Jacob I love, what that means is He elected Jacob. Right? He called him election. He called him to be His child, to be with Him in heaven. But when He said, but Esau I hated, what He means is Esau will go to hell. Now, relax. Listen to the passage and tell me if what I'm saying is consistent with what the Bible is saying. Because people will just read that and just give an explanation and will not continue with the passage. We will continue with the passage and determine if that interpretation is correct. Now, people will protest. But the point of the passage today is God is sovereign. He has the right to do anything and everything He wants without the need to explain to anybody. We like to say that God's sovereign on things that are comfortable to us. But on things that are not comfortable, we question Him. So the issue is not why did God save. The issue is not why did God hate Esau. The issue is why did God love Jacob? Really, if you think of it. Because no one is righteous, not even one. Romans chapter 3 says, no one seeks after God. All has turned away. So in reality, everybody should be hated by God, right? It's not that why did God hate Esau? It's just but right. But why did God love Jacob? Is by grace. Now, does it mean that God chose some to be with Him and some not to be with Him? Does that make Him unrighteous? Diba? That would be the natural thinking. When Paul wrote Romans, he used a certain style. It's called a diatribe. And Paul grew up under Gamaliel. And If you're a student of Rabbi Gamaliel, one of the best rabbis ever in the history of the Jews, what they would do is students would sit down on the floor and Rabbi Gamaliel would teach, and next week he'll say, Bambino, you stand up here, you explain the passage. During class, what the classmates will do is ask questions. They will prepare questions already on the passage that Bambino will teach. Bambino, on the other hand, should be able to anticipate all the questions. That's why in writing of Romans, you will note Paul was asking the questions that he anticipates people to ask. That's why in verse 14, he says, what shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with God? If this is true, that God chose some to go to heaven and some to go to hell, does it make God unrighteous? It's what verse 14 is saying. Because people will not protest on God choosing people to go to heaven, will they? They'll not. It's on people that He destined to go to hell. They would protest on that. Verse 14 says, certainly not. God is not unrighteous. He's able to do all His holy will. He's able to do whatever He decides to do. He has the power and authority to do so. So people were questioning God, not because of the people that go to heaven, but the people that go to hell. As much as it is not unrighteous for God to choose Jacob, to love Jacob, it is also equally not unrighteous for Him to hate Esau. It's funny that sometimes we ask God the question, is God unrighteous and unjust for doing such? And when we say that, when we ask that question, think of it, we're putting a yardstick against God. We're telling God, this is my standards of what is right and what is just, and I will compare your attitude to this perceived standard that I have. Right? Because you're questioning Him. Funny thing, we are the one who's unrighteous and who's unjust. And we are the one questioning the just and the righteous if He is just and righteous. It only shows how corrupt our mind is, thinking that we have the moral ascendancy to even question His goodness and righteousness. That's how spiritually corrupt our minds are. We are telling God, explain. Explain to me, as if He's accountable to me to give an explanation. And if we do not understand His explanation, because our minds are finite, we say He's unjust. He's unrighteous. Or putting God on the stand by questioning His action. What law shall we use against Him? Who will be the judge? Who will be accusing? So Paul said, is God unrighteous for doing such? He answers, certainly not. Verse 15. And he explains, for he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whoever I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whomever I will have compassion. I decide whom I will love. That's my prerogative. Young, old, rich, poor, black, white, cute, ugly. not